I've been playing golf for a long time, but I keep coming across the same misconceptions time after time with different people I'm coaching, people that even just talk about the game. So let's have a look at 5 of them. Let's look to dispel them. I'm sure they're still going to be around, but we'll do our best to explain why these 5 things are the most common things that I see, and they're the most common things that are going to really mess up your game if that's the concept you've got about golf in your head. Hi, I'm Peter Knight, and I've created this channel, Peter Knight Golf, to help you play the best golf you possibly can. Today we're going to make it look even better and work even better by dispelling some of these myths. So we're going to go through 5 of them. Now, the first of them involves the grip. So many players I see, both through their actions and then their descriptions of how they hold the grip or how they've been told to hold the grip, is that first of all they lock their fingers together, then they put both thumbs down straight down the top of the grip. Really easy instruction to remember, really damaging for your golf because you can't use your hands correctly. We're all put together the same way skeletally, hands, fingers, arms. So holding the club correctly is going to allow us to move the club properly. So to dispel that myth, first of all, when I hold the club with my left hand, my thumb's running down the grip, but not down the top, it's slightly off center. So if I imagine a clock face on my grip, 12 o'clock right on the top, and from my perspective 3 o'clock's on this side, my thumb's at around about 1. When I place my right hand on, this is the key thing with the right hand grip, I need to hold the club in my fingers. So I'll move in a little bit closer. So now the club's actually going to run across these 3 joints on my fingers here. When I close my hand over, my left thumb is going to run down the middle of the palm of my right hand. So my right thumb now is sitting on the left side of the grip. And then how I join my hands or not join them is to a large extent irrelevant, provided I'm holding the club more correctly. So whether I grip the club with all of the fingers of my right hand on the grip, my little finger of my right hand overlapping the forefinger of the left, or I have those fingers interlocking, doesn't really matter as long as the hand placement is correct. So that's number 1. The second one is keeping the left arm straight. Now, let's say I'm throwing a frisbee with my left arm. I would start in this position here, rotate my body, and as my body's rotating, my arm will naturally straighten, my wrist will straighten, and away the frisbee goes. So the rotation of my body will help to straighten the arm. The only reason that my arm wouldn't straighten if I was throwing a frisbee is if I'm carrying a lot of tension in my arm, and I don't want to do that. Exactly the same thing in the golf swing. So when I swing the club, if my arm happens to bend a tiny little bit when I swing the club to the top of the swing, as long as I'm not holding tension in the arm, it will naturally straighten as it moves down and through. I need to keep the arm soft. There's a big difference between it being straight and being rigid. So when I swing the club back, again, I'm not trying to stretch my arms out or lock my left arm. Different players, when you watch them, their arms appear to be very, very straight. That's a trained movement. It's not a locked arm though. It may look like it, but I'll guarantee there's not a whole lot of tension in the arm with those players. The third thing, and this is probably by far the most common, anytime you hit a shot where the club swings through, and it swings through without striking the ground. So it swings through a little bit too high. So I'm going to either catch the top of the ball or the middle of the ball, and the ball will go along the ground, or fly really, really low. For sure, someone will tell me, you've lifted your head, you've got to keep your head down, you've got to keep your eye on the ball. Now, certainly I'm going to be watching the ball, but if I make a swing, I'll just make a slowish swing. If you watch my head movement, you'll see that as I swing the club away from the ball, you can see that my head's stable, but it has rotated with my body movement. That's because I'm not holding tension through my neck or through the top of my chest or through my shoulders. I'm allowing that movement to occur. From the top of my backswing, as I'm swinging the club down, my head's rotating back the other way. And then after I've struck the ball, again, because there's no tension here, my head will come up as I continue the swing through. There have been some players through history that have actually hit the ball with their heads aiming toward the target. So their heads has a lot of rotation, more than what most players will. But the key thing though is that it's still quite steady as they're moving back and through. So keep the head steady, definitely don't hold it down, and again, no tension through there. The fourth thing is so many players, they'll describe the difficulty in hitting the ball up in the air, and they say, I'm trying to get under it. And typically I'll ask them, what do you mean by getting under it? When you swing the club to the ground, where do you think the lowest point of the swing is? And most people will say, just before I get to the ball. So if my intent or my understanding is that the lowest point of my swing is here somewhere, then I'm going to be forever either hitting the ground behind the ball or catching the ball as the club's swinging up and hitting it thin. In actual fact, the lowest point of the swing is ahead of the ball. So if you watch players when they're striking balls off the ground, off grass, the divot will actually occur after the ball has been struck. So the contact point is either ball on the ground at the same time or maybe ground slightly after the ball. If it's a pitch shot around very, very close to the green, sometimes the ground will be struck slightly first, but for the most part, the low point is still going to be ahead of the ball. And the final thing, the fifth thing, and this one seems really logical, is that the instruction to hit through the ball sort of implies that you've got to direct force forward toward the ball or toward the target. Now, in fact, when I swing the club, I'm creating a force, but I'm actually moving my arms toward the ground. Now, my arms will reach their peak speed about here somewhere, and momentum is transferred to the club. So the club from there is going to move to the ground. So I'm actually creating more of a downward force. Well, it's down and out toward where the ball is. It's definitely not toward the target. As soon as I start trying to direct a force toward the target, it's very easy for my motion to get out of sequence, to get a little bit flippy. And so if I make this swing here, again, my intent is just to move the club toward the ground. So my club's striking the mat in this case just after I've hit the ball. Now, if you practice those 5 things or consider those 5 things, are you holding the club correctly? Not thumbs down the shaft. Are you standing and are you swinging the club with your head stable and your arms reasonably soft? Soft doesn't mean that you're going to collapse. Are you moving the club toward the ground so that the club catches the ball on the ground at the same time, or the ground maybe slightly after the ball? And do you have your intent to move the club toward the ground rather than trying to direct the force to the target? If any of those 5 things are affecting your game, change the concept and that will change the result.